Hi guys, today's video is about what is going on in Grindavik and around Grindavik. What is going on with the heating systems? Does the southern Reykjanes Peninsula have heat again, or are they still freezing? What about the Blue Lagoon? We've heard so much about the Blue Lagoon. Are they open again? Have they learned anything from the last eruption? I don't think so, if you have seen my video that I released earlier today. So lots of important topics today. And guys, if you want to hear more about my farm and everything as you have asked for, I'll put a little story at the end of this video. So let's talk about Grindavik. I want to throw something out here for discussion. I have read a very interesting comment from one of my viewers. I'm not sure if you want me to name you or not, so I leave it anonymous. If you want to be named, of course, I'll do that in the next video, but I just don't want to name anyone without permission. But I would like to read some of what you wrote. So it's regarding the buyout of the homes of the residents of Grindavik, and there's a huge trouble. They want more money. The government has said you're getting 95% of the insurance assessment, of the fire insurance assessment. That's what you're getting paid. I don't know how they will do this with the land underneath, because fire insurance is for the structure, not for the land. Because if your structure burns down, fire insurance pays and you rebuild, but you're not losing the land the house that burned down sits on. So this is a little bit unclear, so I guess they have to fix that. But the whole discussion that the residents of Grindavik are demanding that the government bails them out. And you know, I always like to look at things from multiple viewpoints. And this comment has given another point of view, and I think it's a valid point of view. And I'd like to throw this out for discussion with you guys. I'd like to know what you think. So, she says, I come from Mount St. Helens territory and I'm old enough to remember it. She means the eruption and the disaster. And people lived and worked there too. And many people lost their stuff in that eruption. And some did have insurance and some did not have insurance. And most insurance companies wouldn't cover volcanic eruptions. So people had to start over. It happens. And I can tell you that it would not and did not occur to anyone involved to hold the government responsible for the effects of the volcanic eruption. It was a natural disaster. The government didn't cause it and has been pouring money into the community and surrounding areas in many efforts to protect the community, etc. So further, Iceland is an extremely small country with a very small tax base. So with all due respect, it would be said that whatever aid the government can squeeze out for the people of Grindavik is also depleting the bank so that there's nothing left for anyone else. I would say that these are not the only folks who ever had to start over due to issues beyond their control. And I've started over a couple of times due to such things as the company I worked for went out of business during a depression, illness, etc. So she says she's terminally ill and lost her home, the retirement income, the car, and had nowhere to go either. And so she says, I'm extremely grateful for the assistance that I do receive from the government, but they don't meet my income at that time. So not even close, not even a third. And they for sure didn't buy my house. So I'm starting over. Again, am I disappointed? Yes, of course. And I get it. It's fearful. However, if I spend so much energy into blaming the government for a volcano that, by the way, you all knew was there, I would have just laid down and died. It is incomprehensible to me that an entire town is demanding the government to buy out their entire lives. Be grateful to the things you lost was only stuff. Thank the government for all they're doing and move on. In time, you will feel pride in having survived and more. And you know, already when I read that comment, I kind of thought, yes, you know, there is a point. And yes. And if you look at all over the world, and of course in the US, yeah, I haven't seen that the government buys out homes. And what is really present in my mind is that disaster in Ohio with the train derailment, the toxic air, the toxic chemical spills. And these people were, in my opinion, left completely alone. And let me know in the comments, by the way, guys, do you want to hear an update or do you want to hear more about that story? I'd be willing to make a video about this if this is something that interests you. So yeah, that comment, it really got me thinking. There is the natural disaster insurance, and the problem with the natural disaster insurance is it was basically made after 1973, when on the Westman Islands, on Jaime Island, West Maniar, there was a volcanic eruption that the lava was flowing towards the port, which was as valuable as the Grindavik port. And so they were trying to rescue their port, but also the lava was destroying many, many homes. There was ashes everywhere. Homes were buried in ashes. There's still a museum today where they're preserved some of the damaged homes. So people lost everything. And in light of that, they very quickly founded the natural disaster insurance, and people would pay into this insurance as a part of their fire insurance. So that was added on the bill. So should there be something else like this, or avalanches or something like this, the natural disaster insurance would pay for the repair of the homes. And should one home be a total loss, they would pay out the person or the owner for the whole loss. But the problem that we're facing in Grindavik is it's not that we're having one natural disaster and then it's over with and the natural disaster insurance can help people rebuild their homes, because that's the purpose, to help keep communities alive and rebuild communities, not give you money to move somewhere else. And the problem that we have here is not only that, we have an ongoing disaster. It keeps repeating every month, basically, and experts are saying this will continue for quite a while. So it's a new scenario. So it doesn't make sense if they pay for repairs, because then next month everything will be damaged again. So the cheapest version is probably to buy out the homes, because otherwise you have to assess, you repair, next eruption with an earthquake swarm is coming, next damage. And so you keep with the continuation of the eruptions, you have to continue to pay for repairs. Another problem is people can't really live in those homes, so it doesn't make sense. So, have the pain once, pay out the residents, and then it's over with, right? Might be the cheaper solution in the long run for the disaster insurance. So, but the disaster insurance, of course, has a reinsurer or several reinsurance companies that are out of country. And of course, those companies are always trying to, talk themselves out of having to pay. So the natural disaster insurance doesn't have all the money to bail everyone out. So that's why they have founded a company that will take over ownership of the town, basically of the residential homes, and the banks will step in with some financing and the natural disaster insurance. The pension fund, as always, they don't do anything. So it is a little bit of a different situation than what my viewer describes with the Mount St. Helens eruption or other disasters in the US. Correct me if I'm wrong, but since Iceland is such a small country and they have this natural disaster insurance, we're talking about the insurance that really has to take care of that. And I know with insurances, it's difficult in the US. If you once had a problem, they will not give you insurance anymore in many cases. Like if you had a flood once, you can't get insurance. And I know many people in California are struggling with this, that all of a sudden they can't renew their insurance, and that devalues the value of your whole property, because if you want to sell it and it's a property that can't get insurance but is prone to wildfires, would you buy it? So it's a very difficult situation, but maybe, and I'm developing that thought while I'm making this video here, maybe we can't compare it one to one, because that disaster insurance is made for specific events, because on that small island, it's fire and ice, it's avalanches, it's volcanoes, it's lava flow. So that's why they made this. In the US, the risks are more spread out. Maybe they should have something for Hawaii. I don't know. If they have, let me know, guys, if you have more knowledge. Do they have something like this, especially for certain areas in Florida where hurricanes or tornado areas or something like this? I don't know. Maybe this is just part of the normal house insurance, but it's a very small microcosmos in Iceland. And of course, it's a problem, right? If they leave these people alone completely, because I think the argument of the residents of Grindavik is, well, on the one hand, you're not allowing us to go back and live in our properties, in our homes that we're paying mortgages for, that where all our money is, and so you're keeping us out, but on the other hand you want us to still pay for that. So that's why the residents have put pressure. They have put pressure on both sides. They wanted access to the town again, and they were successful. So shortly before the eruption, they did regain access, because they were threatening with lawsuits, and the businesses, they're still very, very angry. So I can understand it. It's a difficult point of view. So I think some residents are still saying, well, I'm old enough, I can take the risk, and I'm aware of the risk, and Icelanders have always lived with risk like this, and so we grew up with cracks and eruptions, so let us in. But I also think this is still a little bit of a phase of grieving, and there are in the stage of denial a little bit, because we have seen how dangerous these cracks are. A worker fell and died into one, and we've just recently seen that crack that opened in a indoor soccer arena underneath the artificial turf, so you couldn't even see it, but it was there, and it was just absolutely huge. So there's different sides to the story, and I really don't know the answer to that. I don't know. It's hard. Also, you have to imagine that a lot of people that lost their homes or have damaged homes in Grindavik also worked in Grindavik, because the fishing industry is a large part. So they also have their jobs on hold because the fish processing wasn't allowed to continue for most of the time when it was evacuated since November 10th. So they did get some payment subsidies and stuff like this from the government and belief, but that doesn't last forever. But it was still not enough for them, because they had to pay rent somewhere else and pay mortgages for their homes. So it's a little bit of a difficult situation, because everything is so in that town, the jobs and the living, and it's all in limbo, and they're basically kept out of using all that. So it's very, very difficult, and I don't envy the government that they have to find a solution. And guys, since we're in the middle of the video, could you do me a favor? Leave this video a like, share it, send it out on your social media platforms to help me push this video out a little bit more, so that the algorithm grabs it and supports my channel. And of course, if you're new here, I would love to earn your subscription. So thank you for that, guys, and back to the video. So until tonight, they had time to leave comments on that proposed bill. And so the Prime Minister, Katrin Jakobsdottir, she gave an interview today. She's been out at Swartsengi, where the pipe repair takes place, and with the lava field in the background. And she kind of indicated that there might be some room to twist the screws a little bit after reading the comments. But, of course, money is limited in Iceland. Iceland has been bankrupt once, I believe. So with roughly only 400,000 people on that island, where should the money come from? And, we've been talking about the Blue Lagoon a lot. The Blue Lagoon is a big source of tax income and revenue for Iceland. But, still, I don't agree that just because of money, you put people's lives at risk. Those videos will be in the end screen, by the way. I'm still angry. I just released the video about the Blue Lagoon earlier today, that they're lying about how the evacuation took place and when the evacuation took place, because there's video evidence that they did not evacuate in time as they claimed today. So check out that video in the end screen as well. So further updates about Grindavik. There's a little bit more, but I wanted to throw that comment out for discussion, and let's hear what you guys think in the comments. And here are some more updates about the whole situation. So the Civil Defense has announced today that they have reassessed the overall risk for Grindavik regarding letting people in to get their valuables out of the town, and also for businesses. And they have reassessed the risk for the time frame of Wednesday to Friday for this week. So they are saying that the basis, among other things, is the updated risk assessment of the Icelandic MET Office. So the danger has been temporarily reduced in Grindavik, because right now there is not that much risk of unannounced eruptions, lava flow, or gas pollution. So the current eruption has just stopped, but they are expecting another eruption, but probably not within the next few days. So the Met Office risk assess is also based on the interaction of numerous factors such as monitoring and prevention and the response teams on site and the evacuation time. I mean, the evacuation time was basically zero at the last eruption because there wasn't a huge earthquake swarm like on January 14th, because this time the magma used existing tunnels and basically came up in the Sudnuka crater series where it had been erupted before. So since it didn't need to grind through the ground that much, there wasn't many earthquakes. And that's why I was so angry about the Blue Lagoon, that the guests heard the sirens going on at 6 a.m. And the Met Office has also announced at 6 a.m. that's when the eruption started. And then the guests looked out of the window and we had the volcano in full force. And then the Blue Lagoon says they did evacuate in time before the eruption started. They released this today. And I'm like, what? I mean, who are you kidding? But watch the video in the end screen. I don't want to repeat that story. So, the result of the current risk assessment is that it is possible to open up an increased access to Grindavik, despite the fact that it is not possible to count on an escape route that would lead people out to Grindavik, the road that really goes out to the north out of Grindavik, because that has been destroyed by lava twice. So lava was flowing over Grindavik right at the exit of Grindavik on January 14th, when it was destroying electricity and the hot water pipes that were coming from the Swartsengi power plant. And then it did flow over Grindavik a second time, where the Blue Lagoon is blocking access there, so people can't evacuate through that main road. There's two smaller roads leading out to the west and east. The one to the east, that would be a huge detour if you want to get back to Keflavik or Reykjavik. So only that western route, that's like a coastal road, would be available. And he says, so those who come from other places and want to go to Grindavik are advised that they need a safety card for Grindavik. So it's kind of like something like for check-in, so that they know who's inside the town. And there's also people that have a QR code. They can use that. They do not need to apply for that code again to now access the town. And that risk assessment is valid until Thursday, February 15th at 3 p.m. if everything remains unchanged. So if there's not another earthquake swarm or more eruptions. So about 80 people make use of that access daily. So about 80 residents have used the chance to be in Grindavik every day in the recent days. So they have opened it up pretty quickly after the eruption. But that is not enough for the residents of Grindavik. So Grindavik has an independence association, and they want more access to the town. And they're saying, we call on the government to expand the rules for residents to access their properties in Grindavik. And so the opinion of the member is that it is most reasonable to open access every day from morning to evening, and that property owners have free choice of when they go to Grindavik. Right now they have been scheduled certain time frames, only stay for a certain amount of time and then you have to leave. So residents don't want that, so don't restrict us so much is basically what they're saying. And so not only residents, also companies, large and small companies, should have free access at this time to visit their property, save their valuables, and also conduct their business operations where safety requirements are met. So those individuals and companies who can and want to adapt to the situation should be given the freedom to do so. That's what their resolution says. And this association challenges the Public Safety Department of the National Police Commissioner to minimize the closures of the town and to connect the town's closures only to natural hazards within the town or to the escape routes. They're saying the situation is no longer an emergency response, but a long-term event, and companies have now reached the limits of their tolerance and they need to start creating value instead of saving value. Yeah, it is an ongoing situation, but that doesn't mean that Grindavik has become safer. And, the problem is it's hard to determine when we have a threat to Grindavik and the roads, the access roads only, because whenever we are before an eruption, it's kind of basically a roulette game where the eruption will take place. And they have seen it firsthand on January 14th when the eruption was so close to Grindavik and the second fissure was basically in Grindavik, lava flowing and destroying 3 homes. So that caught them by surprise, and they were estimating that the eruption would take place where the current eruption did take place, in the Sutnuka crater row. So since we're seeing these eruptions with time frames of like 3 to 4 weeks, and scientists have noticed that the time between the eruption is kind of shortening, so it's only been 3 weeks sort of thing between 2 eruptions. I mean, basically that is an ongoing threat to Grindavik, and it's not that the eruption itself is the threat, it's the cracks that are there, and they are not all documented yet. And then it snows again, some are hidden, and still after these eruptions, some still keep widening and opening. So as they said in their new hazard level that they invented, it's the crack collapse, what's the danger to Grindavik, and that is basically still there every day. It gets worse when there's another earthquake swarm, because fissures might expand, new ones forming new sinkholes, but the crack collapse is still there. I mean, remember, they just discovered that massive crack underneath the turf, the artificial carpet, grass carpet, in the indoor sports arena, and that was 2 weeks or 2.5 weeks after the last eruptions when they discovered this. So that's the risk. So I hear them, I feel for the businesses, and it's a difficult situation. The government has announced that the businesses will receive some compensation for lost business. At the moment, they will not buy out the real estate of the affected businesses, only residential, and only if you are a private entity who owns that home, if it's your primary residence. So they said they will look into things in the future, and of course these income subsidies for companies will not last forever. So of course they want a solution, but I think it's very difficult to find a solution. So I don't want to blame the government here too much. I mean, I think they're careful. They want to save lives in Grindavik by closing the town. Totally different compared to the Blue Lagoon, who only cares about being open and raking money, and then he also keeps lying about how safe it is and how they evacuated. Again, videos in the end screen. So we will have to see, guys. I don't know the answer to that, but one thing that happened again is a 3.7 magnitude earthquake that has happened again on the Reykjavik Ridge. The Reykjavik Ridge is basically the continental rift where two continental plates are pulling away from each other. So this rift runs right through Iceland and right through the Reykjanes Peninsula. The 3.7 earthquake has been basically on the same area in the sea, not on the peninsula, so it's been underwater, but it is a sign that something's moving there. So that's why we're also always seeing earthquakes along that ridge on the Reykjanes Peninsula. So everything is rumbling. We have to see what effects that has. So far, no other large earthquakes have been observed on the Reykjanes Ridge. Don't forget, early February, Thorvaldur Thorvaldsson said regarding these earthquakes, these larger earthquakes that we're seeing on the Reykjanes Ridge, he said, I think there are signs that something is going on there. And he said maybe the Reykjanes Ridge is going to erupt. So he's a professor of volcanology at the University of Iceland, and I really value his opinion. And he says the earthquake series that has occurred, and he said that early February in that area where we have seen the 3.7 today, it's south of Iceland in the sea. So early February there was one at 5.4 that was measured there, and more of them have, like smaller swarms have been observed in the past month. So it could be related to the activity on the Reykjanes Peninsula. He believes that the earthquake on this Reykjanes Ridge, although it's further away from Iceland and in the sea, can be completely connected to the events that have taken place on the Reykjanes Peninsula recently. And so he says these earthquakes are at a depth of 6 to 7 kilometers, which means that magma is not coming up straight away, but it could be accumulating under there. So it could very well start erupting there. So I don't know, right? So the threats keep coming to the Reykjanes Peninsula from all sides, and we have seen larger earthquakes in many of the volcanic systems that are there, like Bláfjöll ski area, Brennisteinsfjöll volcanic system, the Krysuvik system, of course. These two systems threaten even Reykjavik with lava flows. Then we had in the Krafla area, Grímsvötn, and of course everything that's going on around Grindavik and Swartsengi. So I'll just hope, I've seen some of my viewers say, well, maybe the whole thing is blowing up. I'll just really hope it doesn't. So we will have to see, because out of like 377,000 people that make up the country of Iceland, roughly 270,000 of those people live on the Reykjanes Peninsula. So that is almost Iceland, right? So this is a little bit scary. And of course, I wouldn't be on the pulse with Silky if I didn't report about this on a daily basis, and be sure I will, guys. So thank you so much for your support. Thanks again for the supers, for your nice comments, for the coffees that you buy me on my buymeacoffee.com website. I'm so grateful for you guys. And let's continue the journey. I just received 30,000 subscribers, so my YouTube journey will continue. And I have to thank you guys for that. And as promised, the story that I promised you about why I'm here, where I am, and about my farm. So stay tuned. Don't shut me down yet. Wait for the end. So guys, I'm out here walking the doggies a little bit, and it's been pouring rain last night like crazy. So I'm walking the dogs and I'm checking on all the horses, whether they are okay. And some viewers have asked me, how did you end up in Canada from Germany, and what's the story? So I thought, while we're walking here, I might tell you a little bit about that story. So as you might have noticed, my farm doesn't look like a golf course. It's a working farm. So there's horse poop, there's mud, and there's always stuff to do. And I keep everything organic. So I'm not using any fertilizer for the fields. I'm not using weed killer anywhere, nothing. So it's completely organic. So that's why it looks natural, it looks rough. And I wanted to do the same thing in Germany, and I did. It was absolutely natural, so there were no chemicals, nothing harmful in the ground. And I thought I was taking care of the land pretty good. And at that time, I was in Canada, going back and forth, and I always came back for the horse side of the business, like breeding and training and selling horses. And so I was going back and forth, but I fell so madly in love with the beauty of Canada. And then it turned out that one day in Germany on my pasture, I was standing here like I am now. And at the end of the property, I see like an old, like hippie style VW bus, like painted with flowers and stuff. And it stands at the back end of the property. And then I see a woman walking in my pastures where the horses are. And whoever owns animal, if you see someone walking in there, I mean, you get on high alert level, especially since we have a lot of horse rippers in Germany. I don't know, thankfully we haven't heard anything about this here in North America. Florida, they had some issues, but I think people are killing the horses for meat. But Germany is full of perverts that especially go after mares on pastures and even in barns, and they slide them open, and it's something sexual or weird or whatever. There's been foals that have been killed, and so you are on high alert. So I go to that woman like I am right now, and I said, "What are you doing in my pasture?" And she's like, "Well, I'm from the ecological office of whatever, I don't remember." And she says, "I have to check your property." Now I have to take a break because I have to detangle the leashes of these 3 doggies here who kept like walking around me while I was talking. So when I ask her what she does there, she says she has to check my property and that the birch trees that grow like weeds on this property, completely natural, and I don't cut them down, right? I didn't. So I let them grow. Whereas this other like farmers or whatever, they cut them down. They don't want them on their fields. So she says, I have to, no, the horse gets stuck on, and the dog gets stuck on the fence. So she said I have to pay a penalty up to 30,000 euros if I don't fence off these trees, because the horses are bad for the trees and they're hurting the trees. So I said, why don't you come through the front entrance and make an appointment with me instead of sneaking in from the back? And then she got like, you know what? You've got that pond there, and I'll declare that a biotop if you act weird. And then I declare your whole property a biotop, and then you can't do anything anymore. So you have to comply. And I came back inside and I said, you know what? I'm not going to fence my trees. This is ridiculous. And it was other things like I had an outdoor riding arena, and there was like a gravel driveway, nothing fancy. And there were like hazelnut bushes that just did grow there because nobody had cut them down. So they grew there naturally. They weren't planted or anything. So we just allowed them to grow instead of trimming them down. So I wanted to put like a chain link fence around the main part of like the barns and the house and the stable area, so that these little buggers here behind me could run free and wouldn't run on the road. So they told me, no, the hazelnut bushes are a biotop, so you can't put a fence there. So you have to move the fence somewhere else. And I said, well, but there's the driveway. Then they said, well, then you have to move the driveway. And I said, well, there's the outdoor riding arena. Well, then you have to move that one too. But if you move that one, you're destroying grass areas, and then you have to plant some trees to make up for destroyed like grass areas and stuff like this. And I'm like, this is, you know how much that costs to move an outdoor riding arena because of some hazelnut bushes? So it was beyond ridiculous. And so by that time, we were looking at, land in Canada, and, it's way cheaper than in Germany. And, we came to the idea, like, you know what? Buy. So that's how we came to Canada. I mean, I have to say the regulations and the rules are catching up here too. It's crazy in Germany. If you want a shelter for your horse, just like 4 posts and a roof, you need a building permit, and you don't get it. And there was a farmer, he was so angry about that. He built a table, like an oversized table where his horses could fit underneath, because they can prevent you from putting a table on your field, right? So he built 2 oversized chairs and a table as a horse shelter, and I really love that. But it's just been problems and too much bureaucracy and regulation. Everybody might feel different about it. Of course, it has some advantages if there's more regulation. Of course, I see that here too, that some ways or some things are way more efficient in Europe because there's more regulation. But everybody has to decide for themselves. And for us, it was definitely the right decision. And now, while I was talking, he put the leash in there and Rudy went into the pasture. And I'm sure you want to roll in the mud, guys. Now you've made a mess and I'm completely entangled by the leash. So I have to clear that out. And another thing that I really love here, and it's great for the doggies and for the horses, is I just love the climate. Because I'm a one-man show here on my farm, so I do everything myself, and I like to keep the horses natural. And what's the great thing is I can keep them out 24/7. We hardly have any lightning at all, like maybe once a year, but I see it from afar. So there is nothing that would endanger the horses on the pasture. No tornadoes, no hurricanes, no big hailstorms, just nothing. And what is so amazing, during the summertime, we have no biting insects, the Bremsen, how we call it in Germany, the deer flies, horse flies, and all that stuff. And no ticks. No ticks. I can walk barefoot through the tall grass. None of the horses, none of the dogs ever had a tick. In Germany, every day the dogs had tons of ticks. The horses come in from the pasture and they had like 20 ticks all over them. So it was horrible. And the biting flies were like in the summer when the horses were outside, you just couldn't let them outside. They were running back and forth. It was the mosquitoes. It was horrible. So you have to bring them into barns, and then you have to clean the barns. It's a lot of work, and it's a lot of waste of resources. You have to buy shavings or straw for the beddings, and costs a lot of money. And you can't do it alone. And here, I fill the water. Of course, I need to feed hay during the winter month, which is crazy this year. But the workload is not that bad. And the peace of mind that you don't have to worry that there is anything hurting them while they're out there. This is just what I enjoy. So guys, this was a little bit more about my story and about the farm. And of course, if you like to hear something about that in the end, I'll definitely continue to do that and tell you more about that. And I guess we will go inside right now and finish the next video. So you guys take care. I hope to see you soon in one of my other videos. And thank you so much for watching, guys. And thank you so much for supporting my operation and my farm, and for buying us the coffees and the supers to support my hay purchases this year. It really helps so much. So the doggies and I, we say thank you so much, guys, and I see you very soon.